morning. Thanks for joining. It's a gorgeous day here in New Jersey. It's sunny and 65. We have an audience all over the US, so you might not be jealous when I say 65 and 60. But again, I know we're looking forward to the first day of spring here. Again, thanks for giving us some time this morning. As you know, we usually have conversations focused on markets and what's going on in the world. It's been an interesting couple weeks, to say the least. I suspect most everyone has had their fill of Silicon Valley Bank at this point. But again, if those are conversations you want to have with Maddie and I, we're welcome to have those offline. The discussion today is really focused on wellness, right? As we think about our business and our values as an organization, it's not just about making sure we take care of our clients on their investment and planning side. It's also make sure we round out the whole you. So throughout the year, we're going to have events that focus on things that aren't just about what we're buying and selling in the market. Could be on topics from Medicare to Social Security, maximizing your corporate benefits, behavioral finance. And today we're excited to have a focus on nutrition and personal wellness, kind of what we put in our bodies and how that helps us and puts more pressure on Maddie and I to make sure you live to 110 years old. So again, the subject matter today hopefully is hitting a broad audience, right? I know everyone probably could use a little better approach to their diet. I realize other events we'll have over the course of the year may or may not be as appealing to you, but if you have friends or family members who would benefit from that stuff, feel free to send them the invites. We would welcome their attendance at our events. And so I'll let Maddie say hello and eventually introduce our esteemed speaker today.
Thank you everyone for joining. We're so excited that you're here. We're even more excited to be able to introduce Chelsea Gold today, a registered dietitian and founder of Eating Healthy with Chelsea Nutrition. She did her undergrad at the University of Miami and her master's at NYU. So she is local to the East Coast. And, as Jeff said, we know that wellness doesn't begin and end with just looking at your financial statements. So we are so thrilled that she will be joining us or that she is joining us. And Chelsea, going to kick it off to you to let us begin here. Just as a reminder, we would welcome your questions. We're going to be asking Chelsea some questions along the way, but we welcome your feedback and questions as well. So feel free to throw those into the chat box. We will get to them at the end, and then we'll just close out with a few announcements on our next webinar. So Chelsea, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Maddie and Jeff, for having me. I'm going to share my screen so that we can start this presentation. Oops, present. One sec. Okay. So like Maddie said, hi, my name is Chelsea. I am a registered dietitian, and I'm going to be talking all about just general healthy eating today, a little nutrition 101. I think that, like Jeff said, like they both said, it's, nutrition is really important, our wellness, and it all kind of starts with what we're eating. So you'll learn a little bit about my philosophy around nutrition, why I started my practice, why I became an RD, and just, I'll answer a lot of questions that you guys have. Just feel free to put them in the chat box. I won't be able to see that, but we can answer them at the end or as I'm going, it doesn't matter. And let's just jump into it. Oops. So I will be covering today, just this is like a little guideline to the discussion. We'll have a little intro about myself, why nutrition is important, what I talk to my clients about all the time, some healthful foods to include daily, how to build a balanced plate, what that looks like, what that even means. We'll talk about some healthy eating tips for just in general, and also as busy working professionals, how to be a little bit more prepared, how to plan ahead, and also some potential barriers to planning ahead and being prepared and how we can kind of kick those in the butt. I have a bunch of different healthy snack ideas for you, and just how to kind of get out of this diet culture mindset and how to just enjoy your food mindfully. And you'll kind of learn a bit about my approach to nutrition and my philosophy as I go. So a bit about myself. Like I said, I am a registered dietitian. This is my dog Lila. I live in Manhattan with my fiance. We're getting married in July. And I have a virtual private practice called Eat Healthy with Chelsea, which I started about a little over 2 years ago. And it's just really what I'm passionate about. I was in this place where I was constantly trying a new diet. I was constantly feeling like I had to start over. I was stressed over food and I wasn't really enjoying it. So I am really passionate about helping people get out of that mindset. Like Maddie said, I went to the University of Miami for undergrad, and then I came back to New York and went to NYU and got my master's in clinical nutrition. I also became a registered dietitian. I always get the question, what's the difference between an RD and a nutritionist? So the difference is that a dietitian has to complete their DPD, didactic program in dietetics, and then you apply to a dietetic internship. I completed my 1,200 hours of clinical rotations at NYU Langone Health in the city. And then you have to sit for the board's exam. So you sit and you pass the exam and you get licensed to be an RD. A nutritionist essentially can just take a little course online, pay a little bit of money, a couple of hours, and you call yourself a nutritionist. So you always want to be aware or wary of the credentials that someone has if you choose to work with them, and just make sure that they are credentialed. I started working in clinical for a while. I was working in clinical nutrition, and unfortunately some life things happened where I lost my dad suddenly, and I decided to open my own private practice and kind of dedicated it to him and to make sure that I can help people live a healthy life without stressing over food, because I think stress is another topic that we'll get to eventually that could be, have a negative impact on our bodies. So that's a little bit about me. I really, like I said, I help people stop stressing over what to eat, transform their relationship with food, and get out of the all or nothing thinking around food and nutrition. So let's get into it. So why is nutrition important? At the very basic cellular level, food is energy. It fuels our bodies, it fuels our cells. Without food, we would die, basically. But food is also a lot more than just nutrition. It's a lot more than just nourishment for our body. It's a form of connection and culture and family. So we're going to talk about that also. But at the very basic level, we need food to survive. And something that I talk about with my clients all the time is this idea of nutrient density. So nutrient density, for example, it's basically the bang you get for your buck. So let's say that you have a handful of jelly beans and a handful of almonds, for example, and they both, in this scenario, have the same amount of calories in both handfuls. The handful of jelly beans, however, is just going to provide some sugar for your body, which will really just cause a blood sugar spike and crash. While the handful of almonds that provide the same amount of calories will provide more nutrition. So you're getting more bang for your buck. You're getting your macronutrients, you're getting protein, you're getting healthy fats, you're getting some fiber, and you're also getting your micronutrients. So you're getting those vitamins and those minerals. So I'm not saying that there's not a time and a place for jelly beans, because they were actually one of my dad's favorite foods. I don't know if you can really call it a food, but one of my dad's favorite things. And sometimes they're nostalgic, and sometimes, food has other purposes, like I was saying. But if you're looking for a snack that's actually going to keep you fuller for longer, then that's when you choose that handful of almonds, basically. My philosophy around food is that all foods can fit in a healthy diet. It's just about the intentionality, bringing mindfulness and awareness into your food choices. So having a most of the time attitude is what I like to call it. There are a couple of barriers that I hear my clients say when it comes to making healthy food choices. The convenience, accessibility, speed, cost. Those are 4 things that I hear commonly from my clients and just from people in general. But I'm here to tell you that it can be convenient, it can be accessible, it can be quick, and it can be cost effective. It doesn't have to be a huge ordeal to make healthy choices. And also, it's about kind of getting comfortable in the kitchen. Can you, make easy, quick meals that are easy enough for you to just kind of whip together quickly. So it is possible, is what I'm trying to say. I like this quote by Michael Pollan: "Eat food, not too much, mostly plants." I think that this is it's just a simple way of looking at food and nutrition. And that's really my goal of working with clients, is for them to understand that food really can be simple and it doesn't have to be overwhelming or stressful. So I like this quote for that reason. Here are just some healthful foods to include every day. I always say try to eat whole, real foods at as many meals and snacks as possible. Another misconception that I hear is like snacking is bad. I have clients that come to me and they'll give me a 24-hour recall, and I'm like, where are the snacks? And they go, oh, I don't snack. That's bad. When in reality, I always encourage people to snack. So we'll talk a bit more about that also. So these are your 3 macronutrients. You have carbs, proteins, and fats. So under the carb category falls your fruits. You know what fruit is. Your non-starchy vegetables. These are your dark leafy greens, your cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and then all of those other non-starchy vegetables. Your starchy vegetables are peas, corn, potatoes, squashes, that type of thing. Whole grains like your whole wheat bread, your Ezekiel bread, which is one of my favorite breads to recommend to people. It's a sprouted bread, so those micronutrients are more absorbed in the body. Then also like your quinoa, your whole wheat pasta, that type of thing also. And then dairy also falls under the carbohydrate category. So lactose is a carb. 2 questions that I always get from this is, what about juice? Like, what about juicing, fruits and vegetables? My answer to that is sure. Like, if you enjoy a juice, go for it. The only problem, if you want to call it a problem, that I have with that is that when you juice fruits and vegetables, you lose the fiber. So when you're eating the whole fruit, you're getting that fiber, and fiber is really important because it helps keep you fuller longer. It promotes good gut bacteria. It aids in digestion. There's a lot of reason that we want to include fiber in our diets. So when you juice the fruits and vegetables, you lose that fiber. So if you are having a juice, I try to recommend to choose those lower sugar fruits, and maybe including some greens in there also. And if you can pair it with a protein or healthy fat, like, having a handful of nuts, again, those almonds with the juice would be a great way to make it more of like a snack and something that isn't just going to raise your blood sugar levels and have that spike and then that crash. And then the second question that I always get is, what about dairy? And my answer is kind of similar. If you can tolerate it and it's something that, you don't have any GI distress from including dairy in your diet, then there's absolutely no reason not to have it. If it does cause GI distress, some higher lactose foods might cause a little bit more harm on your stomach. Then you just want to be aware of that. It's very individualized, person to person. And speaking of individualized, nutrition is very individualized. This is kind of just an overview of what I usually talk about with my clients. So that's also something to keep in mind here. But when it comes to dairy, I think, including dairy, if you're able to tolerate it, is totally okay. 2 of my go-to breakfasts are plain Greek yogurt bowls with some fruit and peanut butter, chia seeds, and also cottage cheese with some fruit, same situation. So I know cottage cheese is very controversial, but those are 2 of my go-tos. So dairy, totally okay. Juice, it's okay, but have the real fruit when possible. Moving on to proteins. So there's animal-based protein, which is obviously like your chicken, meat, fish, eggs, and then your plant-based protein, which is your legumes, your lentils, tofu, tempeh, hummus, that type of thing. Another question that I always get here is, Can you be plant-based and still get enough protein? And the answer is definitely yes. You just want to be smart about it. I'll get a little bit sciencey here for 1 second. So the building blocks of proteins are amino acids. There are 20 amino acids, and 9 of them are essential amino acids, meaning that you have to get those from your diet. Animal-based proteins provide all of those 9 essential amino acids. It's the plant-based proteins that don't provide the 9 essential amino acids. So, except for quinoa. Quinoa is one exception. So that's why you see people eating like beans and rice, for example. You get some of the essential amino acids from the beans, some of the essential amino acids from the rice, and combine them, you get all of those essential amino acids. So that's what I mean when I say that you want to be smart about it. Make sure that you are, kind of pairing those foods to make sure that you're getting all of those amino acids that you can't make in the body. The other 11 amino acids, they're non-essential. You can make those in your body. So that's a little bit about that. Also, if you are more plant-based, vegan, then taking like a vitamin B12 supplement is something that I always recommend as well. But getting that tested in blood work is really important. And then your fats. Fats don't make you fat. Also a common misconception. We need fats in our diet for many, many reasons. Usually, I have people saying, oh, I had a salad for lunch, just some lettuce, vegetables, and chicken. Say, well, and they're like, I'm hungry an hour later. Where's your healthy fat? Usually that healthy fat, it's what's really going to be that push to keep you fuller for longer. And we want to include unsaturated fatty acids in our diet, getting those omega-3s. This comes from sources like salmon, any fatty fish, avocado, olive oil, nuts, seeds, that type of thing. And then limiting your saturated fat intake and your trans fat, of course. So that is the breakdown of your macronutrients. Okay. This is generally what I recommend when I say having balanced meals. This is more so for lunch and dinner. Breakfast, maybe you're having like oatmeal or a yogurt bowl. I'm not going to tell you to put some spinach in there because that would probably not be super delicious, but thinking in terms of where can you add those vegetables and those fruits when possible. So this is always what I recommend to help keep you full for about 3 to 5 hours. That's what we want our meals to keep us full for, 3 to 5 hours. If they're not keeping you full for that, there's usually something missing. And then our snacks, I like to think of a snack as like a Band-Aid. So keeping you full for 1 to 2 hours is the goal for the snack. So here I recommend making half your plate vegetables. A quarter of your plate would be those whole grains. A quarter of your plate would be those lean proteins, and sprinkling those healthy fats throughout your meal as well. And that doesn't mean you can only cook with olive oil and you can't have avocado in your meal. You just want to sprinkle it in here and there. And yeah, so that's usually what I recommend. And then choosing water as your drink, but we can talk about that as well. Sometimes I have clients who say when they start implementing these things, they'll say, but I feel like I'm eating more times throughout the day, but I'm eating less overall. That's usually the feedback, like almost 100% of the time that I get. I'm eating more consistently through the day, but overall I'm eating less in quantity, essentially. Okay. Here, I just have some healthy eating tips to keep in mind. My number 1 tip is to always start your day with breakfast. Maddie and I were just talking about Gwyneth Paltrow, how she was telling the world about her diet, how she doesn't eat until noon and she just has coffee for breakfast. That is the one thing that I would recommend not to do. I don't know if anyone has seen that, but definitely starting your day with breakfast. Coffee is not a meal. Usually, I have some people who will say, oh, but I'm doing so well during the day. Okay, what does well mean? I'm eating clean. What does that mean? I'm having coffee, nothing in it for breakfast. I'm having lettuce and chicken for lunch. Dinner is, more of a meal. And then I find myself in the pantry at 10 p.m. knee deep in a bag of cookies or chips or pretzels or whatever it is. So that's when we really have to take that step back and start eating earlier in the day, start actually having a meal that provides fiber, protein, healthy fats, and then eating consistently throughout the day from there. So that's, if you do find that you're in the pantry at 10 p.m. and kind of going and having all the snacks, that's when you want to kind of take that step back and reassess what you're actually eating throughout the day, because our bodies are so much smarter than we think. We can't just, we need energy. Like we started out this presentation, we need energy to survive. We need fuel. We need to be fueled properly. So that's going to be really, really important. And then choosing nutrient-dense foods as often as possible. Like we said, those fruits, vegetables, those high fiber carbohydrates, healthy fats, and those lean proteins. Include vegetables at meals and snacks, add fruits to your breakfast and snacks. I have limit your processed food intake. I think that I don't want that to be misconceived that like packaged or frozen or canned foods are bad, because they're not. Sometimes that's what's the most convenient. And I think it's really important to remember that when, fresh isn't always best. If you don't have anything fresh and you have frozen food, don't automatically go and get takeout, because you can still make a really healthy meal from frozen or canned or pantry staples. And those are also really important to always have on hand to just be prepared, which we'll continue to talk about. I have avoid caffeine in the afternoon here. If you feel like, you have that afternoon slump and you're kind of in this routine of just going and making a coffee, is it a habit? Has it become a ritual? Is that something that you do just, like I said, out of habit? And can we try to change that habit? Now that you're aware of it, I think that having caffeine in the afternoon, a lot of research obviously has shown that it can affect your sleep, whether you don't fall asleep super quickly or you're up throughout the night. So I always say to avoid or limit caffeine in the afternoon. And if you feel like you need that energy boost, asking yourself, when's the last time I ate? Because again, food is energy. Maybe you just need some nourishment to actually feel more energized. And there are also a lot of other ways, are you staying hydrated? Are you drinking water? Are you, maybe you need to get up and get outside and get some sun. Maybe you just do some jumping jacks right where you are if you don't have time to go and, actually get a big walk or exercise in. So there are other ways to get that little afternoon energy jolt instead of going for that cup of coffee, in the afternoon. And I'm not anti-coffee. I'm a coffee drinker. I never tell clients not to drink coffee. It's just kind of thinking of it. Is it that habit? Do you really need it? Is there something else that you can do instead? And then choosing water as your drink or to accompany other beverages. I'm sure, I usually get a question about alcohol and how much or what's the best one to drink. But I'm happy to answer any of those questions that come up, but choosing water as your drink is always going to be my recommendation, or having it, if you are drinking alcohol, following like that every other rule. So having a drink and then the water, or having the water and then the drink and then the water, better yet. So that is just some of my tips. And I think also what's important to note here is I'm all about addition. I like to think of it as nutrition by addition, not subtraction or not restriction or eliminating. It's more, how can I add those nutrient dense foods? It might crowd out some of the less nutrient dense foods, but you don't have to completely avoid them. So it's about kind of thinking where I can add these foods, not what I have to take away, which I think is a big mindset shift for people to start making. Just some tips for busy working professionals. Being more mindful of your hunger between and during meals. After maybe years of dieting or, trying different diets or trying to be good during the week, and then, your cheat meals, we kind of lose touch with our hunger cues. So being more mindful, which I'm going to talk about a lot on the next slide of how to be mindful, but just being more aware of them, and maybe you take a break every couple of hours to check in and say, when's the last time I ate? Do I need a snack? Is it time for a meal? That's going to be really helpful. Also, eating every 3 to 5 hours when you're starting on this like journey of getting rid of the diets and just kind of trying to listen to your body. Eating every 3 to 5 hours is going to be really helpful. Also, it just helps you get more in tune with your hunger cues as you know throughout the day. Pack your lunch and your breakfast, I should say, when possible. I have, you know, a couple of my favorite things to do is just to make more at dinner time, and you can bring leftovers the next day. I have a bunch of easy, quick breakfast ideas like overnight oats or chia pudding or just making some hard-boiled eggs. They're all super quick and easy to make. The next one is to not skip meals and snacks. Again, eating every 3 to 5 hours. That's how long we want our meals to tie you over for. And then skipping meals is what will lead to, you know, more cravings later on. Also leads to more, you know, late night snacking, mindless snacking. So when we're actually hungry, we want to make sure that we're eating. And when we're working and we're busy, it can be hard to remember that. So even like scheduling your meals in your calendar can be something that can be really helpful. Has been really helpful for my clients as well. And then again, this is the theme throughout the whole presentation: add fruits and vegetables when you can. Again, think about what you can add, not what you have to take away. So speaking of water, how to practice mindfulness. My number one tip for this is to remove distractions. And my clients sometimes hate me for a second when I say that, you know, try not to watch TV, try not to be scrolling on social media, try not to be working if possible while you're eating, putting electronics away while you're eating so you can start paying more attention to the food that you're eating. You can be more present in your meal. And I think, for example, let's say you're having a big bowl of pasta, and let's say you're eating it in front of the TV and you look down and you're like, oh, wow, it's all gone. And you realize you're super full because you weren't paying attention to your food. You were watching TV. In another scenario where you're having that bowl of pasta, hopefully with some veggies in there, you can be sitting at your table, maybe with whoever you're eating with, and you stop eating halfway through your meal and you realize, you know what, I'm full. I don't need to eat this whole thing of pasta. So that's what the biggest takeaway is with removing electronic distractions is that you can really just start paying more attention to what you're eating. Another benefit of that is there's something called the satisfaction factor. And sometimes we want to add there's a difference between fullness and satisfaction. So if you're full, you know, when you're full, but you're like, you know what, I still need something, right? Like I still need that something sweet, or I still need that something crunchy. When you're having your meal and you're present with your food, you might recognize that before, and you might say, you know what, I want to throw some like slivered almonds on here because it's going to add that crunch that I need, or I want to throw some craisins in my salad because it's going to add that sweet and chewy texture to it. So we want to kind of start to be more present with our food so that you don't feel that afterwards or later on. Another tip would be to check in with your hunger. So start to practice checking in with your hunger throughout the day. If that's challenging, like I said, after years of dieting, eating every 3 to 5 hours will be helpful for your body, you know, to understand that food isn't being restricted anymore. So when we're dieting, we're following rules around food, and we want to help our brains to understand that that's not, you know, food isn't restricted anymore. All foods can fit. Again, just starting to check in will be really helpful. And then eat slower and take breaks during your meal. So when we're eating quickly, we often overeat. So try chewing slower, put your fork down between bites, and take a break halfway through your meal so that you can, again, check in with your hunger and fullness. Some tips about planning ahead and being prepared. So go food shopping on the weekend or whenever is convenient for you. If you don't like to go on Sunday at 1 o'clock when the rest of the world is there, is your schedule flexible? Can you go on Wednesdays at 10 a.m.? You know, plan that, put that in your calendar so that you have foods that you can just grab easily. You can grab them and have a quick, healthy snack on hand. Prep quick, easy breakfasts or lunch or snacks the night before or the weekend before, honestly, whatever is easy for you and your schedule. Again, these are 3 of my favorites. Overnight oats, chia seed pudding, and hard-boiled eggs are really all super easy to make. And then bring snacks with you. So bringing snacks with you makes you less likely to go to the vending machine or to go to the bodega and grab something that might not be as nutritious or, might not be the most healthful food choice out there. So planning that in your calendar, making time for it is going to be really helpful also. So just some potential barriers to making healthful food choices. And I think that something that's really important to remember, it's not all about the food. Going back to the mindfulness that I was just talking about, it's not necessarily what we're eating, but it can be how we're eating also. And all of these things can affect how we're eating and what we're eating. So there's so many different things to think about here. So we'll talk about, staying hydrated. Your sleep also can affect your food choices, physical activity, stress, and just having a busy schedule. And having that busy schedule, what I just talked about was, with planning ahead and being prepared will be the most helpful with that. So staying hydrated, start your day with water. I feel like I've been saying my number 1 tip. I have a lot of number 1 tips, I guess, but you always want to start your day with water after you're getting about 7 or hopefully 8 hours of sleep. Our bodies are dehydrated. We wake up dehydrated. Good job, Jeff. Thank you. We wake up feeling, tired. And if you do wake up feeling tired, having that cup of water first thing in the morning can give you a good energy jolt. I always recommend to my clients, if you forget to drink water in the morning, leave it somewhere that you will remember. I leave it on my nightstand. I sit up, I drink it first thing in the morning. Maybe you leave it by your toothbrush. Maybe you leave it by the coffee machine. Maybe you put it by your feet and you have to trip over it a couple of times to actually remember to drink it. But just making sure that you are starting the day with water will be helpful. If you like to add lemon to your water, go for it. Is it completely necessary? No. If you like it cold, drink it cold. If you like it room temperature, drink it room temperature. However you like it is however you're going to drink it. And that's what I always recommend. And then aiming for at least 64 ounces of water per day, or if to get it a little bit more personalized, you take your body weight in pounds and divide that number by 2. That's about the number of ounces that you want to be having per day. Also, another rule, I don't like to call it a rule, but something that I like to recommend is water before coffee and coffee with breakfast. So just keeping that in mind, because you want to rehydrate after a night's sleep before having coffee. And then, like I said before, if you are drinking alcohol or if you do drink alcohol, following the every other rule while drinking, just to make sure that you are staying hydrated as well, because alcohol tends to be dehydrating. Here, just talking a little bit about sleep. So making sleep a priority. We want to get 8 hours of sleep per night is what's recommended, 7 to 8 hours. You want to try to put electronics away at least 30 minutes before going to sleep. I don't know if anyone has ever seen blue light blockers. That can be really helpful. Also, if you are watching TV or on your phone close to bedtime, I have my clients sometimes say goodnight to your phone so that, you can kind of say goodnight, that's it, see you in the morning. Having a nighttime routine is also something that's really helpful. Maybe you have sleepy time tea, or you do a meditation or some stretching, you take a hot bath or shower, something to get, to wind down maybe after a stressful day or a day that, maybe it's a crazy day. And having that nighttime routine in place can be helpful also. And then avoid big meals close to bedtime. I always hear is where I get the question of, what if I'm hungry? If you're hungry, I'm all about, maybe you can tell by now, I'm all about honoring your hunger and eating when you are feeling hungry. But I would recommend going for something that isn't going to be greasy or fried or a high fat meal. So that's going to be important also. But if you are hungry at night, I think having a snack, a handful of nuts can be great, can be a great snack. I don't know, as a kid, it'd be like more milk, but maybe, there's something that is a little bit that will help promote sleep rather than inhibit it. Okay. And then get moving. So plan your workouts in your calendar is a really something that's really helpful. Plan it like it's a doctor's appointment. Like it's something that you can't miss because this is so important, getting your workouts in and really getting out of the mindset that it has to be an hour workout where you're super sweaty, and it doesn't have to be like that. Getting into the mindset that anything is better than nothing, whether it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 45 minutes, it doesn't matter. Maybe you do 10 minutes a couple times a day, and that's what works for you. Or maybe you do 45 minutes every other day. Whatever works for you and your calendar and your schedule is what is best. I think if we take the amount of time that we spend scrolling on social media or doing other things, get moving instead, or do it while you're walking on the treadmill or something, so that, we want to, staying active is really important. And I have some of the recommendations here just to think about. And also walking counts. Walking, I think, again, we think like we need to do this super intense activity. Walking is a really great form of movement. And then, so stress management is going to be really helpful. When we are more stressed, our cortisol levels tend to be higher. Our cravings tend to be higher, when we tend to crave more of those simple carbs, those higher sugar foods. So that also increases our fat storage, makes it harder to lose weight. So something that, you want to be aware of is your stress management, exercise. I like this over here, exercise, nature, therapy, relax, music, spa. So those are just some examples of some things that you can do to help manage your stress. Just, getting in the mindset that when we are higher stress, we tend to mindlessly snack, or, if you're emotional eating, that's when that happens more. So again, when you are prepared, those more healthful food choices, you can grab those instead of the less healthful food choices also. Here, I just have a couple of healthy snack ideas that I like to recommend. Veggies and hummus, yogurt with some berries, apple and peanut butter, or any fruit that you like with peanut butter. Also carrots or celery with peanut butter is another great choice. Hard-boiled eggs with some vegetables, cheese and crackers, or some grapes in there if you want. And then maybe those individual guacamole packs with some veggies is another great choice also. And finally, enjoying your food is going to be is what's, food is more, like I said, like we started this conversation, food is more than just nourishment for the body. It's also a form of connection. And we want to be able to enjoy all of our foods in a mindful, empowered, intentional way. It's just getting to that point where you feel comfortable, where you can take those foods that might be on a pedestal right now, you're not allowed to have, let's say, ice cream during the week, and then on the weekends you go and you have the whole pint. How can you start to include it during the week so that it's not something that's held on this pedestal so that you overeat it and feel not so great afterwards. It's about getting out of the all or nothing mindset with food, because like I said, all foods can fit. Remembering that guilt and shame are not ingredients. There's a lot of marketing right now around guilt-free. There's no guilt in any of these foods. It's how can you enjoy any of the foods without it feeling like there's a guilt associated with it. And that takes practice to kind of get out of that mindset. It's not always so simple. And that's exactly what I work on with my clients. And then saying goodbye to diet culture, getting out of, feeling like you have to always start over without, feeling like there's no more rules. You don't have to follow a rule. It's about listening to your body and understanding your body. And that's all that I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. You can find me on Instagram, Chelsea the Non-Diet RD. This is also my email address and my website. And yeah, if you'd like to chat more. And then if there were any questions that came in, I'm happy to answer anything in the next couple of minutes that we have.
Thank you, Chelsea. There were actually some questions that came in. So we'll start with the first one here. How do people make more time for breakfast and lunch without, gorging at dinner, especially, those of us who are busy at work during the day or taking care of children, whatever the case may be is.
Yeah. So the biggest thing, like I talked about in here in the presentation, is really planning ahead and being prepared. So can you take 5 minutes, 3 minutes even, the night before to plan out your breakfast for the next day? And if it's not the night before, can you do it over the weekend so that you feel more prepared? Making 5 different overnight oats recipes or containers to have for the whole week, and maybe you spend a half hour on Sunday just chopping up vegetables. You don't even have to cook them. It doesn't even have to be a half hour. It can be 10 minutes. Where can you just find those few minutes every now and then so that you can have those vegetables chopped so that you're more likely to grab them instead of something else? And making it a priority to really eat consistently throughout the day. That's also going to be key so that you don't get to dinner feeling starving.
Mhm.
I talk about this, it's called a hunger quotient scale with my clients. And when you arrive really low on that hunger quotient scale, you eat quickly, you overeat, and then you get really high on that hunger quotient scale and you feel uncomfortable. So how can you eat more consistently throughout the day and prepare for those times so that you don't overeat and gorge at dinner? Does that answer that?
Yes,
That's
thank
right.
you.
Just a quick question staying on that topic. Like we talk about planning in our business, right? Like you have to be prepared. It's kind of like the last 2 weeks we saw the markets go sideways on some news. So coming back to this preparation concept, Chelsea, like what are I'm thinking about my pantry and I can tell you, like, I have 15 pounds of angelo pasta there, right? Like, what are those things that you have that's at the ready that won't put you in a position where you're going to be feeling guilty 10, 15 minutes later that you ripped open the bag of Triscuits and ate half of it? Like, what are those things that you would say would be worthwhile?
Like what to have on, like, in your pantry?
Yeah,
Like
just
what?
the prepared stuff that maybe like chopping the vegetables is tough because I'm in the moment. I'm holding a 10-month-old and a 4-year-old's breaking things. Like what are those things you'd recommend as
Yeah. So if chopping vegetables and like actually preparing isn't realistic, or, it's not realistic for you and your lifestyle, buying pre-chopped vegetables, buying baby carrots, buying celery that's already in the container. And when it comes to pantry staples, I love to recommend, trail mix or roasted chickpeas, roasted edamame, some things that are like, if you're craving that crunchy, salty something, a celery stick isn't going to do the trick. That's just not going to cut it. I'm not going to lie to you and be like, yeah, just go have some celery, you'll be fine. But having something, even just pairing it with, like, if you want some of the Triscuits, can you take some of the Triscuits, put it in a bowl and put some carrots in there and hummus in there also, so that it can be more of a snack that you're not just mindlessly holding your 10-month-old and things are going on. Can you just take a second to put things in a bowl so that you can be more present, more mindful, and actually have a snack that's going to be more beneficial for you and your body and the rest of the day, rather than just mindlessly going at the Triscuits. Does that answer?
Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
One of the other questions that I think might be on everyone's mind is, that question of fad diets like keto, Atkins, the Mediterranean diet. What is your response to that? What do you think is the right answer?
Yeah, it's definitely a question that I get all the time. If you couldn't tell, I'm not about the fad diets. There's a lot of research around this idea of willpower, and willpower is like, it's innately negative. So you're telling yourself that all these foods are off limits. It's like, think about your 4-year-old Jeff. If you tell him he can't have something, he's just going to want it more. And that's the same with us. It's the same with our brains. So
I'm thinking about yourself. I'm not thinking about a 4-year-old. That's me, right? In a nutshell.
yeah.
Good.
Yeah, see, it's exactly. So when you tell yourself, oh, I can't eat these foods, that's when you want them more. And then eventually life happens and you're around them and you overeat them and you go crazy on them. So that's kind of my philosophy with food. I'm not saying that food, there are in certain foods that you want to include more of and foods that you want to maybe limit or just be a bit more mindful of your intake. But I think when you put a label on it, that's when our minds kind of, it gets a little more complicated. And then yeah, I'm following this diet, or yeah, I'm following that diet. And then what happens when you break it? Do you jump off the deep end? Are you completely on or off, good or bad? That's my main concern with these diets. But at the same time, yeah, it's really important to include those more nutrient dense foods. It's just, do we have to label it so that when you mess up, it's more of a mindset thing, more of a mindset, like getting into that mentality that it doesn't have to be one or the other.
And what about, we had 3 more questions come in. I want to make sure that we get to them here. What about a balance of nature and super beets? Are they as good as supplements?
Is that in the chat?
Yes, it's one of the questions that came into the Q&A.
Are balance of nature and super beets good as supplements? I'm not sure I know what nature and super beets are.
I guess maybe they're trying to ask, is getting enough fruits and vegetables just as good as taking vitamins, or should we still do a combination of both?
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was like a brand or something that I like, to go for food first. I think that sometimes we take these supplements, these vitamins and minerals, and it just turns into expensive pee. Sometimes, unfortunately, but if your blood work is saying that you need supplements, then there's 100. I'm all about supplements, but I'm not about supplements just for the sake of taking a supplement because you think it's the healthy choice, because we don't always need it. If you are having a varied diet where you're including fruits and vegetables and other whole grains and fiber and healthy fats, you don't always need the supplements. There are some like omega-3s, which are great to take. A probiotic is really good to take, a multivitamin maybe. But again, it's not 100% necessary for everybody. That's where nutrition is very individualized. And checking and working with a dietitian and having them check your blood work and make those recommendations is going to be more individualized in that regard. So it depends on the person is kind of the answer.
And then we had a question come in about eggs. Seems like there's a lot of debate about eggs. How many are safe per day, per week? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of information about eggs out there. There's one on Netflix, the vegan one, where they say eggs are like smoking a thing of cigarettes, which is not, that study was not, that's not
and
true.
They're just as expensive, so
right. Yeah, eggs they're expensive now. I think that eggs are the perfect protein. I think that they are a great source of choline. There's lots of brain benefits, in the yolk especially. I think there's been this misinformation, and newer research is showing that eggs don't, or the yolk especially doesn't contribute to your like negative cholesterol. So I think eggs are great. If you do include them in your diet, I think that they're a great source of protein, healthy fats. And, I wouldn't say to eat 12 eggs a day, but having 2 eggs a couple of days a week is totally, totally okay, even if you do have high cholesterol, because the newer research is not finding that there's an association between high cholesterol and your egg intake.
And to that same theme there, what about, we had a question come in about oils. Should they be avoided? And, there are some people out there saying that oils are inflammatory. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like to recommend to use olive oil and avocado oil the most because they have more of those unsaturated fatty acids. There are other oils that are a bit more inflammatory. I think there's a lot of fear mongering around food, and this idea that foods can just like completely ruin your health. And I don't agree with that. I think that, if you're using a little bit of these seed oils every now and then, there's nothing wrong with it. In higher amounts, it can be a bit more inflammatory. And you want to include more of those anti-inflammatory, healthy fats in your diet. But in, having it in moderation, every now and then is not the end of the world.
And our last question here that we'll wrap up with, to Gwyneth Paltrow's interview, what are your thoughts on intermittent fasting?
I always get this question. Again, it's very individualized. I personally don't recommend it, especially with women. You know, hormones are different. Like I like to tell people to listen to your hunger. And sometimes if you're not doing it the right way, intermittent fasting, if you're just kind of like eating whatever you want during those eating periods, it doesn't work. So if you're doing it the right way and it's something that is working for you and it helps you, I think it's okay. But in general, I am more about, listening to your body, not really having those rules. Like what happens if it's 11 p.m. or let's say even 9 p.m. and you're hungry? Are you going to go to bed with like grumbling tummy? That doesn't sound fun. So I am more about listening to your body, and there's ways to be healthy and reach your goals by doing that instead of following rules and following diets. So maybe that's not what you wanted to hear, but that is my opinion on the matter.
That's great. Look, I mean, I'm seeing this presentation before. I always find myself taking notes. I'm the first person to admit to being guilty of like working, watching, shoveling food down, and inevitably, like I probably eat it so fast it's stuck in the upper part of my body, hasn't even made it to the stomach. So that the shutting off, hey, you're full, move on. I'm like making these notes. I'm like, being more purposeful. And again, I can't keep harping on the idea of having a plan. How critically important that is to everything you do in life. But I do like the routine idea. Like we have a pretty good routine. I'd say my wife more so than I try to do my part at least during the week, infrequently. We're like, we get our boys, they have their tub, we read for a little bit and then like wind down. And I think like having the routine around how you wrap your day up, like I do see that being very good on the dietary side. I mean, I personally, there'll be days where I put my older guy down, and like I'm usually in bed with him reading, and I might nod off, then get up, and then I'm like, spun around, and I find myself like shoveling in some mini muffins or cookies. So like I think creating the routines for ourselves that we may use with a young one is something that I would really try to take to heart. Let me round this out, Chelsea. Right, like Maddie and I in our world with respect to the advice or counsel or response of our clients is all about like being disciplined, being structured. So when you think about your relationships with your clients or your friends or family, like what is it that you really can see being a positive outcome in the relationship? Like what is it like when people engage you? Like what's their commitment to that? What do you see as the positives in terms of getting this task under control?
Yeah, I think it is more about like taking the pressure off of the food, taking the stress that you might find, like instead of feeling guilty for like eating those muffins or whatever, after the kids are sleeping, like how can you take the stress off of it and just listen to it better so it doesn't take up as much of your headspace. There's so many other things in the world that are more stressful than food should be, and just kind of having it down pat makes the rest of your life easier, makes your work easier, makes relationships easier, makes sleep easier, makes managing your stress easier. So having these like habits in place, and I don't even like to think of it as discipline or as like being disciplined. I think that again kind of like puts that pressure on it, but it's about kind of like thinking of every meal and snack as a new opportunity to nourish your body, no matter what you ate the meal or snack before. Getting out of that mindset that it has to be perfect, because the truth is that there's no such thing as perfect eating. And you want to just be able to be able to enjoy those foods that you love without it being this all or nothing. And I think that the biggest takeaway that my clients have is just feeling so much less stress, feeling less guilt, feeling like other things in your life can be more a priority rather than food, like taking up so much time and space.
That's right. And with a food coach, like just to pile on, like so like you talk to your clients, weekly, quarterly, monthly. You check in with like what do they have? You have weight loss objectives. Give me a little bit more of like the idea of, hey, I'm sensitive to, we provide a value to our clients. What is the value to you in terms of talking about that ongoing relationship?
Yeah, so I usually work with clients on a 3-month basis. We'll start with 3 months and then we'll go from there. And I have some clients that when they step on the scale, it's super triggering. So we don't even have to focus on the weight, the number on the scale, because if you step on the scale and that dictates what you eat the rest of the day, that's not going to be productive. It's not going to be helpful. So we can focus on energy levels. We can focus on setting other goals, maybe in the gym or with a workout. We can focus on better digestion, better gut health, just feeling better, better sleep, all of these other things that we can kind of keep track of. And even just your thoughts around food. Like if you're constantly thinking about food 24/7, can we lower that a lot, not having to track everything that you're eating and just being, again, able to listen to your body. So there are so many other markers that we can think about instead of like a number on the scale.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. I also, I'm starting a group program actually next week where we will be talking all about everything that I talked about today, building balanced plates, adding more variety, how to go grocery shopping without it feeling stressful, creating that healthy relationship with food and getting out of this all or nothing mindset. So if that's something that anyone here is interested in and learning more about, it's actually starting next week, and I would love to chat with anyone who's interested. I'd also love to throw in, an extra bonus one-on-one session with me, since it will be more of a group setting. So that's just something else if anyone is interested in that. I'm really excited for that to kick off next week.
Great.
Thanks.
Maddie, go ahead, please.
Yeah, we'll be sending that information out. So we'll be sending Chelsea's contact and website information out in a follow-up email. So thank you so much, Chelsea. I know I learned a lot. I hope everyone else did too. I found it really informative, especially the healthier snack ideas. I selfishly had to throw that question in there. But, just like how Chelsea talked about how important it is to stick to a plan and develop a personalized strategy, Jeff and I definitely believe the same thing when it comes to overall financial wellness. And in fact, I had a conversation with a client yesterday who mentioned that Jeff and I must really not be enjoying our jobs right now, especially with the recent market volatility and the headlines splashing around. But this is actually when we honestly enjoy our jobs the most, because it allows us to highlight the value that we bring to our clients, especially when in a time that they need it the most. So if you haven't already heard from us, I can guarantee that you will, just to make sure that you're feeling comfortable and confident with your investment strategy, your overall financial plan. And as always, if you have any immediate questions, please feel free to reach out. Like I said, we'll be sending Chelsea's contact and website information out with the recording of this webinar. And then our next webinar will be on April 18th to review the first quarter of this year. So be on the lookout for an invite for that. And thank you everyone for your time. Thank you, Chelsea. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you all again in April.
Thanks for
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Have a good week.